Hello, my name's Shalise. Welcome now everybody to my ranking of the Star Wars trilogies. There is now officially 3 trilogies done: the sequels, the prequels, and the original trilogy. We're gonna be ranking from worst to best. I'm gonna give my overall opinion about what each trilogy has brought out, each movie has brought out. So let's start off with the worst of the bunch. The worst is the sequel trilogy. And all these diehard fanboys who believe the prequels are worse, no, they're not. The prequels had a story. The sequels. What's the beginning about? After Return of the Jedi, we were all excited to see what was this new franchise going to be about. What's this new version of Disney? What happened after Luke Skywalker defeated the Empire? Well, nothing much has changed. The sequel trilogy is a copy and paste of New Hope, for at least The Force Awakens. The first movie, Force Awakens, was a copy and paste of New Hope. The Empire's still around. They're called the First Order. The Rebel Alliance is still around. They're called the Resistance. Princess Leia is still a general, and she still works for the Resistance. She's now the leader. So nothing's changed. What happened to Luke Skywalker? All this stuff. Like, how is the Empire still around? How are they still in power? How did freaking there's this thing in the movie where it's revealed that a lot of like these troopers or clone troopers and all that stuff that works for the Empire, a lot of these troopers were taken at a young age from their families and raised into the Empire, which is an interesting take. But the problem is, though, there's no good explanation as for why that happens. There's no explanation as to why the Empire took control over the galaxy again, over the New Republic. There's no explanation that is given in the Force Awakens or in the rest of the damn movies. What reality happens, nothing really changes. We get the information is put inside of a droid, is sent to a desert planet. And on the desert planet, a scavenger finds it, and lo and behold, they meet Han Solo, and they're going against a new Death Star called Starkiller Base. So the first movie, The Force Awakens, just did copy and paste A New Hope. You said you got a new character named Rey, a person with not really an origin story. She's just doesn't know where she comes from. Has been waiting on Jakku on this desert planet for so long for the people who left her to come back, which ain't gonna happen. And Finn, the stormtrooper that left his ranks, he's a deserter, so now he's masquerading as a resistant leader. And the sequel trilogy, after The Force Awakens, after the good guys win, it's the same storyline as New Hope, good guys win. But Force Awakens is something very foolish. They let the Padawan, or the young apprentice, or the young person who's learning about the Force, beat the person who was trained in the Force in the most ridiculous way possible. Then came The Last Jedi. Last Jedi gave the explanation as to why Luke Skywalker left society and why he believes that it's time for the Jedi to end and all that stuff. Overall, the movie was not good in my opinion. The Last Jedi did nothing for the franchise. And then Rise of the Skywalker, it destroyed a lot more. Rise of Skywalker and Last Jedi destroyed a lot of what made the franchise interesting. It just destroyed a lot of Star Wars canon lore. Again, the sequel trilogy, at the end of the day, nothing's changed from the original trilogy. The sequel trilogy, nothing was changed. Han Solo was still a smuggler. Princess Leia was still a general. The only thing that changed was Luke Skywalker. Luke Skywalker, the hopeful man who could not even kill his own father. His explanation for why he turned to his nephew Ben Skywalker, or Ben Solo. Sorry, his name is Ben Solo, not the canon character. But Ben Solo turned to the dark side because Snoke was influencing him, and we don't get an explanation as to what happened. We don't get into no explanation as to, their explanation of Luke Skywalker about to kill his nephew while he slept is because he sensed the darkness within him, but he couldn't do it at the end. This movie destroyed what Luke Skywalker was about. Last Jedi. The sequel trilogy is an insult to me of all the original trilogy characters. Of what the original trilogy characters done before. They just wanted to do their own different take, new different character, and that was it. Nothing's changed. And you know what also is terrible about the sequel trilogy? They destroyed people don't need to be trained to use the Force. They could just do whatever. And the best way I could describe this sequel trilogy is what Han Solo says to the stormtrooper Finn. He's the stormtrooper character is like, will use the Force. And Han Solo's like, that's not how the Force works. And that's what this new franchise has done. They do not understand how to use the Force. They do not understand that the people need to be trained in order to become great with the Force. Not because they're born with it. So, and people want to talk about like how the prequels did the midichlorians and all that stuff. Midichlorians is not ego. Midichlorians are just basically a scientific term of the Force. It's a scientific term, like how much midichlorians you have, that's how strong you are in the Force. But that's not what the Sequel Trilogy did. Sequel Trilogy, what they did with lightsabers battles in general, or about how the Force works, is basically, if you think really hard, you could do it. You basically don't need no training in order to become a full-fledged Jedi Knight. Everything that came before Star Wars, of the prequels and original, and the Sequel Trilogy, did nothing for it. The Sequel Trilogy did nothing. You want to do hyperspace battles? Like you could do kamikaze runs and destroy other ships? Yeah, it only worked one time, and apparently that was a 1 in a million chance. They ruin hyperspace battles. They ruin lightsabers battles because they do not understand the lore. The Sequel Trilogy, made by Disney, did not want to create new things. They just wanted to cash grab with a soccer ball droid with BB-8. They did nothing for this entire franchise to enforce what Star Wars was, to enhance the lore. They did nothing for this franchise. The Sequel Trilogy is god awful. Good acting and good cinematography, and a pretty scripts and all this stuff, how they are talking and all this stuff was good. But for an overall movie, that is not a script that was good, but the lines that they say, the line delivery was good. The actors did a great job, cinematography was awesome, and some of the best looking Star Wars films are from the Sequel Trilogy. But if you're looking for stuff that makes sense, with lore and this new world that this world that they've been establishing for over 40 years, it's broken. The Sequel Trilogy has broken every single thing about what makes Star Wars great. In my opinion, they have done nothing for this franchise. Absolutely not. If anything, they have taken a back seat from the franchise, and this is to me nothing but a bad fan fiction. I know I'm ranting and all, and I know I'm just going over and over why I do not like the Sequel Trilogy, but I'm giving you every single explanation as to what's happened. The last thing I could really say about the Sequel Trilogy is, again, you had one director who made the first film. He gives details to the second director for the second film. That director takes that, puts it in the trash, and does his own thing. No one is talking to each other. No one is communicating with each other about a beginning, middle, and end with a lot of these characters. One character named Poe, he was supposed to be killed off in the first movie. They switched it around. It's changed at the last minute. And then you wonder, like, what's his story arc for the second movie and third movie? There's only one main character in this movie, and it's called Rey. And that's it. Rey and maybe Ben Solo. But what they've done with their characters, I didn't feel nothing for Rey's character. I didn't feel nothing for Ben Solo. I felt nothing for the Sequel Trilogy, just rage. There's nothing good about the Sequel Trilogy. It's absolute garbage, dumpster fire. Now, second best trilogy, the prequels. Yes, the prequels are great, in my opinion. You know why? Because the first movie, The Phantom Menace, let's go into like what a prequel should do. It should explain about certain things about what happened in the original trilogy. It should explain about where Anakin Skywalker came from, how C-3PO R2-D2 got to this place, how did the Jedi Order was destroyed, what happened to this old system of government before the Empire, and the rise and fall of Darth Vader, how we get to see the birth of Darth Vader and the rise of Emperor Palpatine. Does the prequels do it? Yes. The problem with the prequels is that their dialogue scenes are terrible. George Lucas doesn't know how to write a romantic dialogue in any scene. What are the prequels about? The first film, The Phantom Menace, is all about, behind the scenes. It's mostly about, Trade Federation is forming a blockade up with this one planet, and what they want to do, they're being enticed by Emperor Palpatine to go do this stuff. Emperor Palpatine is the puppet master of the prequels. He's manipulating the Trade Federation to stage an invasion of Naboo, so he could so she could escape and basically go to the entire Senate and get rid of the old Chancellor and put Palpatine in charge. He manipulates so many things behind the scenes, and he ultimately gains power. Attack of the Clones movie, most of that movie was about Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi's relationship with one another as master and apprentice. Also how Anakin starts to fall in love with Padme, or he's been in love with her, and then they have that creepy romance drama. Obi-Wan Kenobi's looking for the bounty hunter who's trying to kill Padme. Ultimately, it leads to the Trade Federation again, who is basically not only behind the assassination attempt, but they're forming their own government, the Separatists, to take on the New Republic. And thus begins the Clone Wars that we've been anticipating since A New Hope, since Obi-Wan mentioned Luke Skywalker. It was the dark times before the Clone Wars and all that stuff. So, in Attack of the Clones is the beginning of the Clone Wars. And the beginning of the Clone Wars happens because Jar Jar Binks, a prequel character, gives the Chancellor emergency power. And the Chancellor during this time is Palpatine. So Palpatine has orchestrated an entire war to gain ultimate power inside the government and the New Republic. Or the Old Republic. And the thing is, though, after Attack of the Clones comes Revenge of the Sith. Revenge of the Sith is Darth Vader falls into utter madness. In the second movie, Anakin Skywalker, Darth Vader, loses his mother to death. And in the third film, he's married to his wife, Padme, and she's pregnant, and he gets a vision of her dying, just like he had a vision of his mother dying. So he's obsessed with not making sure she doesn't die. During this time, he's a battle-hardened warrior along with Obi-Wan. Their connection with each other is amazing. Their chemistry with each other is great as master and apprentice. They become brothers in arms in a time of war. And during this time, Anakin starts to realize that the Jedi Council is not all perfect, that they're making rash decisions during times of war. They don't trust Palpatine. The Palpatine doesn't trust them. And he manipulates Anakin. He says, I could save your wife from certain death. And you could save her too if you join me. It ultimately leads to a decision, what will Anakin choose? He chooses Padme. He chooses love. But he ultimately turns to the dark side and he eliminates the Jedi Order. And Palpatine manipulated so much of everything that he gets the Jedi to attack him in a matter of self-defense, and he has now a right to eliminate all the Jedi. So the Jedi are exterminated. The Old Republic is dead. The birth of the Empire is here. The clones have turned on the Jedis, and now they're going to don new suits. Anakin Skywalker turning into Darth Vader was amazing. The birth of Luke and Leia was awesome. The prequel trilogy connected everything about the original trilogy. It connects everything to the original trilogy. It makes characters so much better. They make Obi-Wan greater. They make Yoda look awesome. We get such great introductions to new villains and new characters. We get Darth Maul, Count Dooku, General Grievous, Jango Fett. There are amazing characters, and they tie a lot to the original trilogy, especially with Jango and Boba. And I really enjoyed what they were doing with this franchise for the prequels. The prequels did an amazing job of expanding the Star Wars lore, building new planets, showing new characters, and making sense of its lore, and seeing the Master and Apprentice for the first time. I appreciate the prequels so much. I love what the prequels has done for the Star Wars universe. They enhance what Star Wars is about the original trilogy. And people said, oh, they don't like the new ones because they don't like Jar Jar Binks and all this stuff. Jar Jar Binks has a better character arc in 2 movies than any of the sequel characters ever had. He is ultimately, Jar Jar Binks, as George Lucas says, is a key to everything. Because at the end of the day, he gives Palpatine emergency power of the government to start a war. He gets the power to start a war. He doesn't give up his power. Becomes Emperor. The prequel trilogy is amazing. From a storytelling standpoint, it's amazing. Now, are there hiccups? Yes, there is. There is plenty of hiccups with the prequels. The prequels had a big main issue with the dialogue. And some people find these films boring, especially Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. But to me, I wasn't bored. I was introduced to this new world, different systems that we're seeing. We're learning more about Tatooine's politics, Master and Apprentice for the first time. We learned so much about the Star Wars universe. I was just happy along for the ride. I'm like, this makes sense. Oh, this is Naboo. This is interesting. Like Onion City. Okay, I'm interested in this new world. But most fans just wanted what the original trilogy had. And the original trilogy, which is number 1, it's a simple story. The Empires are the evil guys. They have a guy with a... like that shit. It's a guy in a black suit with a red lightsaber. And they're the bad guys. And the beginning of Star Wars in general, the original trilogy, which is number 1, obviously started this entire franchise, but it was a very simple story. The guys in whites are the bad guys, who's led by the guy in the black suit. The Rebel Alliance are this group of misfits who have our Princess Leia with them, Han Solo the smuggler, and now Luke Skywalker. The original trilogy started off the entire franchise. It did, and it was amazing. See the twists and turns of Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader, I am your father. So many of those moments are great. Having Chewie around, C-3PO, R2-D2, all these characters are amazing for the original trilogy. But again, it's a simple story. They're at war, they've been at war, and we're already put into this world with a lot of action, with a lot of stuff, because it's non-stop. The Rebel Alliance is constantly attacking the Empire, and Empire is constantly attacking the Rebels, and each movie, it feels like it's non-stop. Like, first movie, Empire has control over the galaxy, and the Rebel Alliance beats them at the end of A New Hope, and it's a great victory and all that stuff, but the action just keeps on. And Empire, they keep up with that because the Empire strikes back. They defeat the Rebels. They lose their home planet of Hoth. It's very interesting, very well done, and the action is good. But it's a constant flow of action. But there's no time to really take a step back and be like, man, I wonder what the Empire, how they run their government. We don't ask ourselves these questions about how the old life was, because we didn't need all that. It was a simple story. Again, white guy in suits, bad guys. Green guys in suits, good guys. Simple, easy. Guy with a red lightsaber, bad. Guy with a green lightsaber, a blue lightsaber, good. Good versus evil. It's a very simple story. But it doesn't end. Again, this is why, in a sense, I appreciate the prequels a lot, because they enhanced what the government is. They advanced about what Jedi training is. And even the original trilogy, we learn about Jedi training with Yoda teaching Luke Skywalker in Empire Strikes Back. And the original trilogy, again, it's about the birth of the end. The original trilogy was all about the fall of the Empire and a one man's journey, a young boy's journey from growing up on a farm in Tatooine to becoming a resistance leader, to becoming a war hero, to becoming a full-fledged Jedi Knight to redeem his father and to stop the Empire. That was the original trilogy was about. And if we're going like timeline standpoint, the prequels timeline makes sense. The original trilogy's timeline makes sense. The sequel trilogy does not. But to me, Star Wars in general, for its entire trilogies, I will always appreciate. I will appreciate the original trilogy. I will appreciate the prequels, not the sequels. But again, what people don't understand about what made the real trilogy so great is because it was a simple story. It was just, again, good guys, bad guys, we're in a war, no time to stop, one victory after another, one loss after another, and one final victory. First film, victory. Second film, defeat. Third film, victory. It's a simple story, and the sequel trilogy just wanted to copy and paste that. They just wanted to copy and paste that. In the prequels, there's never really was a war until the end of Attack of the Clones. The first two films were just set up to who Anakin Skywalker was. And for the prequels, for the first movie, a young kid who grows up into slavery, who wants to free his mother from slavery. That's who Anakin Skywalker was in the first movie. Second movie, he's a young Jedi Knight who's falling in love with a woman. And he has to embrace that fact. Third film, he's a battle-hardened warrior and he wants to protect this woman and make sure she doesn't die. There's this great story arc for the original trilogy, the prequels, and it expands Star Wars lore. The new one, Sequel Trilogy, didn't expand new lore. They just, again, it's a copy and paste of the original trilogy and there's nothing new that adds to it. Some new creatures, yeah, but again, each Star Wars trilogy has new creatures to adapt, has new planets to adapt, but they didn't really do much to sequels. If we're looking about planets, what they introduced, we got a jungle planet, we got a salt planet that looks like a snow planet, so that's their new idea. We got a casino planet. Endor, where the Death Star is still around, apparently, in Rise of the Skywalker, or the old remains of the Death Star. And another desert planet. Prequels? Naboo, Corsica, Mustafar, Camino. I mean, what more could you ask for? There's like so many Geonosis. There's so much stuff that they add in the prequels with like planets, how they're designed, the storytelling. I know I'm appreciating the prequels a lot. I am a prequel fan. I am always will support the prequels for what they've done for this universe. But the original trilogy is the best. The original trilogy is easily the best of all the Star Wars trilogies. Then it's the prequels, and then it's the sequel trilogy. But to me, that's what the ranking should always be. The original trilogy is the best. The prequels second best, and the third dead last are the sequels. So, to my opinion, everybody, I think my opinion. Again, it's my opinion. I believe it's only valid opinion because no one could explain to me why the sequel trilogy was good. No one can explain to me why the sequel trilogy was good. I can understand the complaints against the prequels. I can understand complaints against the original trilogy. But for people who loved sequels, I do not know how you could. I really do not know how you could. But yeah, everyone, my name's Shalise. Let me know what y'all think, everyone. Subscribe if you like this. Comment down below. Let me know. Respect my opinion. Respect yours. I know I repeated myself, but let me know what y'all think, everyone. What's your own personal opinion about this entire trilogy? Did you like this video? Did you hate this video? Let me know what y'all think, everyone. My name's Shalise. Thank God for everybody. Bye-bye.